Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Tuesday, the fourth day of November, 2025. And there are three major issues in the headlines this morning, which deal with the future of Israel and the Middle East, the future of New York and the United States of America, the future of anti-Semitism around the world that will affect both Christians and Jews. It's hard to overestimate how important these stories are. And it's interesting they all come together right now. So we'll do this episode of Breaking News and try and explain it from a biblical perspective, as we always do here. Each time we do Breaking News, if you're new to us, it's from a biblical perspective. We start with the Bible and go from there. What does the Bible say is going to take place at the end of this present age? And how do events that we see in the world now fit in? And so that's what we do here. So let's look at these headlines. First of all, from Gatestone, how Hamas is exploiting the Trump plan to maintain control of Gaza. Very well put, something we've talked about a lot, but it kind of summarizes where we're at right now. And then this huge story from Newsmax. Mamdani is a result of radicalism, moving from classroom to city hall. And as Newsmax says, it can have this could be a turning point for the United States of America. If he is elected mayor of New York City, the floodgates will be open and there'll be no going back. So this is a huge day to see if this takes place. Today is election day here in the United States, and so we will wait and see what happens. And then an excellent talk by Mark Levin that's also on Newsmax Wire that covered it from over this last weekend. He slams Tucker Carlson. He says, if you're a Jew hater, you're a Christian hater. And he's absolutely right. So we'll look at these three stories and put them into perspective. Again, the importance of each of these stories cannot, I stress, be overemphasized. All right, headline number one. How Hamas is exploiting the Trump plan to maintain control of Gaza. This is from Gatestone. For Hamas, U.S. President Donald J. Trump's peace plan announced in early October is evidently nothing but a temporary ceasefire, or it's called a hudna, that should be exploited to ensure that the terror group, with the help of Qatar and Turkey, expands its political and military control over the Gaza Strip. The terror group, however, has not been facing any difficulty in hunting down Palestinians suspected of collaboration with Israel or those who dared criticize Hamas during the war. Hamas, in addition, is not in a hurry because it has a serious problem with phase two of the Trump plan, which requires the terror group to lay down and decommission its weapons. What we are witnessing, and this is key, is a calculated delay that aims to buy time and exhaust the U.S. administration until Trump abandons the numerous ultimatums he has issued to the terror group. The foot dragging aims to allow Hamas to reassert control over the Gaza Strip. According to some reports, Hamas has recruited up to 7,000 new fighters during this time. Amazing. Hamas's actions and media interviews given by its officials since the beginning of the ceasefire show that the terror group has no intention of disarming or relinquishing security control over the Gaza Strip. Further evidence of Hamas's total disregard for the Trump plan and ongoing effort to reassert control over the Gaza Strip was provided on November 1st by the U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM. On October 31st, it was provided on November 1st. On October 31st, the U.S.-led Civil Military Coordination Center, it's called the CMCC, observed suspected Hamas operatives looting an aid truck traveling as part of a humanitarian convoy delivering needed assistance from international partners to Gazans in northern Khan Yunis. The Coordination Center was alerted through video surveillance that a U.S. MQ-9 aerial drone flying overhead to monitor implementation of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Operatives attacked the driver and stole the aid in the truck. The driver's current status is unknown. All right. There is no lasting stability or peace until Hamas is removed from Gaza, a step that will require the use of force against this fascist militia. This is Ahmed Al-Khatib, a former Gaza native and respected political analyst. He said this on X, formerly Twitter, on November 1st, 2025. The article goes on to say, even if we reach phase two of the Trump plan, Hamas will undoubtedly try to hoodwink everyone, including the Trump administration. Hamas, for instance, might hand over some of its assault rifles to a third party, but keep most of its tunnels and arsenal of weapons, including rockets and explosive devices. It's also possible that Hamas might try to incorporate its members into a new security force that would be deployed in the Gaza Strip under the pretext that they are not affiliated with the terror group. They've already worked on doing this. So the article finishes, it is time for the Trump administration and the international community to realize that what we are currently witnessing is an attempt to rebrand and reproduce Hamas to ensure its continued control over the Gaza Strip. Hamas should not only be removed from power, but from the entire political, economic, social, and military arena. Again, that's from Gatestone. Came out today, this story. All right, it's an excellent explanation of the problem and the necessary solution, but here's the question. Will it happen? All right, that's one huge problem that has to do with Israel and the Middle East, ongoing, how it's going to be solved, when it's going to be solved, we don't know. But then we move to another one, and this is, again, tremendously huge for the United States of America. The election day here in New York City and other places. Mamdani is a result of radicalism moving from classroom to city hall. This is from Newsmax, and it's certainly true what they're saying here. A socialist is about to run America's largest city. Higher education is to blame. A political earthquake is about to hit New York City. Zoran Mamdani, a self-proclaimed socialist and rising star of the far left, is now leading the race to become mayor of America's largest city. According to recent polling, he is ahead of his nearest competitor by double digits. If you want to see what decades of unchecked radicalism in higher education leads to, look no further than this campaign. Let me tell you, this is so true. As one who spent a large part of his ministry going on to college campuses for decades, actually, and speaking and hearing the feedback and seeing what these students were getting and seeing how woke and how anti-Christian, anti-Jewish, anti-America things had become on these college campuses. Okay, so it goes on. Zoran is not a political fluke. He is a product of a system. His father, Mahmoud Mamdani, has spent decades at Columbia University championing Marxist theory and anti-Western ideology for one of the most influential academic platforms in the country. The ideas that were once fringe, now they are fueling political campaigns, writing policy platforms, and shaping the future of our cities. And this is the difference here. It's incredible. Mahmoud Mamdani represents a generation of professors who turned the classroom into a launching pad for activism. Through books, lectures, and curriculum, they have normalized the view that the United States is irredeemable oppressive, capitalism is theft, and the Western tradition should be dismantled. Their students listen, and some, like Zoran, are now taking those beliefs directly to the ballot box. As a Christian university president, this is the writer of the article here at Newsmax, I have spent years watching this trend take shape. While many colleges have become breeding grounds for grievance politics, and anti-American ideology, a growing number of faith-based institutions are holding the line, and they are, and thank God for that. They're committed to forming students in wisdom, truth, and service, not ideological conformity. The answer to extremism in higher education is not less education, but education rooting in moral clarity, order, liberty, and enduring values. It's interesting. That's why our website is called Educating Our World, because we're trying to do the same thing here, giving a biblical base, a biblical background for who we are, why we're here on this planet, what's going to happen to us when we die, and we use it, totally from the Bible. That's our textbook. Anyway, he goes on to say, sadly, this is not the kind of formation most students receive today. No, it's not. We are definitely in the minority here. Backed by the Democratic Socialists of America, Mamdani's platform reads like a manifesto, not a municipal plan. Abolish the police, cancel rent, redistribute wealth, and fundamentally remake New York's economy and institutions. This is not a case of progressive reform. It is a blueprint for ideological revolution being sold as compassion and justice. This is exactly what I confront in College Without Communism, a book I co-author with Joshua Lisek. Together, we lay out the ideological capture of the American higher education and the path to restoring it. American higher education, particularly at elite institutions, has drifted from truth and character to grievance and ideology. Instead of forming wise and virtuous leaders, our colleges are producing political radicals now poised to take power in the most influential city in the world. This is no longer a theoretical threat. This is the key. It's happening today. More than 35% of Generation Z, view socialism more favorably than capitalism. In the social sciences, more than 60% of college faculty identify as far left or liberal, while fewer than 5% identify as conservative. You get that? Over 60% are far left or liberal, only less than 5% is conservative. The imbalance does not shape college campus culture. It shapes the minds of future voters, policymakers, and civic leaders. If Zoran Mamdani wins, he will not just govern New York, he will set, and here's the key, he will set a precedent for other major cities from LA to Chicago to Atlanta. His success would embolden a new generation of activist politicians shaped not by real world experience or constitutional wisdom, but by critical theory and revolutionary rhetoric. Isn't that the truth? Their ideas will be shaped not by any real world experience. This guy's never held down a job or any constitutional wisdom, but goes back to the critical theory and revolutionary rhetoric. What begins in the university no longer stays there, it governs. And the article concludes, we must respond, we need to rebuild America's higher education from the ground up. We need colleges that form students into citizens, not revolutionaries. We need faculty who challenge students to seek truth, not conform to an ideological script. We need institutions to teach history as it happened, not as a weapon of political convenience. In short, we need colleges without communism. As Scripture warns, we must not be taken captive by hollow and deceptive philosophies. That warning was for the church, but applies just as urgently to our classrooms and our culture. The time to speak up is now. The ideology that captured our universities is no longer content to stay on campus. It wants to write the rules for cities, school boards, and entire generations. And unless we confront it, it will. Wonderful story from Newsmax. And our comment is this: today may mark, we'll see, a turning point in America. And if it is, it's a point of no return. If Mamdani wins, he'll be the first of many to reshape America. Literally, God help us. And finally, headline number 3, just as profound. This is from Mark Levin. He slams Tucker Carlson. If you're a Jew hater, you're a Christian hater. This is from Newsmax Wire. At the Republican Jewish Coalition Annual Leadership Summit in Las Vegas over the weekend, conservative commentator Mark Levin, he's my favorite commentator, by the way, delivered an explosive defense of Israel, Christianity, and American values, declaring if you're a Jew hater, you're a Christian hater. Levin, the nationally syndicated radio host and author, used his fiery speech to confront what he called the poison of anti-Semitism spreading on both the left and parts of the right. He named names from Tucker Carlson to Nick Fuentes and others, accusing some in conservative movement of betraying the principles of liberty and faith. For 6 months, I've been fighting these so-and-sos, Levin said, and I've been looking over my shoulder for help and found nothing. He blasted right-wing figures who flirt with pro-Hitler rhetoric or isolationism, saying wrap their psychotic, unhinged, Nazi-clad jihadism around American patriotism. This is true. These are the ones, the isolationists. We don't want to get involved. We just don't want to get involved. He called what he described as cowardice within the conservative media world. We're surrounded by cowards who have microphones, cameras, websites, and columns. Without directly naming all of them, he made clear his targets include Carlson and others who have questioned U.S. support for Israel or platform voices sympathetic to anti-Semitic views. The radio firebrand said it's time to cancel those who cross the moral line. We canceled David Duke. We canceled the Klan. We canceled Joseph Goebbels. And will darn well cancel Hitler's admirers, Stalin admirers, and Jew haters, Levin said to thunderous applause. His words ring so true. However, the future for Christians and Jews will indeed be a tough road. We know that from Scripture. All in all, Israel, the United States, and anti-Semitism, the 3 major topics that are front and center in last days Bible prophecy, are front and center today in the headlines of November 4th, 2025. Israel's God's clock, his timepiece. What happens in Israel determines what's going to happen with respect to the future of the planet. The U.S., we know from Scripture, will become non-existent as far as prophecy is concerned, and anti-Semitism will take over the world with Christians and Jews, with both suffering persecution. For a biblical documentation on this, please see our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, especially Sign 3, Israel will miraculously return to its ancient homeland in the last days, and this sign has set the stage for everything else. Then Sign 11, no superpower will intervene on Israel's behalf when they're invaded, according to Ezekiel 38:39. Something's going to happen to the United States. Sign 21, there'll be a rise in anti-Semitism. The entire world will be against Israel. And finally, sign 22, Christians will still exist and will continue to be persecuted. These 3 stories illustrate those 4 signs. The book is a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. So this is a watershed day. We'll see what happens in New York. The race has supposedly grown tighter and closer. But end of the day, we'll know, or tomorrow morning at least, we'll know. When we do our second edition of Breaking News, we won't have any final answers because it may go later into the night. We're 3 hours behind New York, and so since we do these in the afternoon, the voting will have not even been consummated. So we'll let you know first thing in the morning. But I'm sure if you pay attention to the news tonight, you'll hear it, and you'll hear our commentary one way or another tomorrow. So pray God's will be done. Like we said, this could be a huge day for America, could change us forever. I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.